Hello and welcome. So I know it's time to do the RCP turn, but I wanted to pause real quick. We've made it very far into the game, and there are some advanced concepts that are really difficult to explain to new players. And I'm hoping that we are far enough along that I can explain some of those things to you. And what I was doing is I was thinking this morning that if you play against real people, they're not going to do some of the things, like they may do exactly the things that these AI do, but there's other things that I have seen in games that people do, and I wanted to just address those real quick. First one, the concessions. And the concessions are, remember that draft you do at the beginning of the game? The most important thing with the concessions is if you look at the player order ones, my recommendation is don't spend dollars to go first in player order. There are plenty of good companies in this game, and I hope I'm demonstrating that to you. We're making great money with DSJ. We're making great money with Kibbles and Bits. The Russian companies are doing fantastic. Mr. Wellington is showing how the London companies do great. Heck, even Medici, who didn't even want to own companies, is doing great with his. And De Gaulle is probably the only one that has failed you, but I can tell you what he did wrong. And if I played that AI again, I would do it differently and make sure I did it correctly. So that's the first thing. I don't like spending money to go first. Now, if you have a very specific strategy, like you want to go heavy in Britain, you need to spend money to go first. Because if you wait until turn 7, which is the first player order thing that costs, these little concessions that are on the back here. See how this is, that's $20 to go third, right? If you want to spend $0, you can go 7th. And it is something you'll see people do. They'll go to the turn order track and they'll put their bid on the 7th spot because that's a $0 bid. And so it is basically a free way of saying I want to go first as I can without having to spend any money. And there's nothing wrong with that strategy. That's a very sound strategy. The reasons you want it, but if you wait till 7th to go, you are not getting plum. Even though De Gaulle did not do well with plum this game, trust me, you are not getting plum. It'll be gone by 7. You are not getting either lawnmower or GWR, and you're probably not going to get DSJ. So those 4 are usually 4 of the top 7 that go. So if you want any of those companies, you're going to want to, draft first. Now, you will sometimes see Chin go, which was the other De Gaulle company. And I think De Gaulle suffered from having so many great choices. He went after 2 of the top 7 companies, anyways, we can talk about that later. But some of the Russia companies will go early. You'll see that. One thing that should not go in the top 7 are the German companies. And the German companies are sort of like if you guys ever do fantasy football drafts, and I apologize if you don't, because this analogy won't make any sense. But, you need a good kicker on your team, but when it's the first, second, and third round of your draft, you don't draft a kicker. It's stupid. Because all kickers are good. And yes, if you grab the best kicker in the game, he's not that much better than the middle tier kickers. So he'll give you maybe 6 extra points than somebody else, but if you get the best running back in the game, that is huge. So that's why you use the early rounds of the draft to get the more premium players, and you can always get a good quality kicker later, even if it's not the best kicker. Well, Germany companies, the Prussian companies, fall under that category. Of the 4, I will tell you BHB is by far the best of the 4. People can argue and debate with me, and I will not be convinced in any fashion that any of them are better than BHB. Now, with that said, I just showed you how to do KBS, and we did it well. In fact, we're doing better than BHB in this game. BHB is actually doing awful in this game. And this is the next part I want to tell you. Just because you get a great company doesn't mean you're going to do great. You still have to play it right. And in this case, Lawnmower and GWR were taken by Mr. Wellington. He then took BHB, and he basically took 3 premium companies. And you can tell he was only able to invest in 2 of them. The third one never got any of his investment because you only have so much cash to go around, right? And that leads to another advanced concept. And I demonstrated that in this game. You want to buy up to 6 shares to get to your 60% share limit of a company, and then you want to do a merger, right? Because then you get a 7th share. And that's a way you could sort of cheat the game limit. Well, when you do that strategy where you're buying 6 shares of something, that means you're buying 0 shares of your other companies because you only have so much cash at the beginning of the game. So this is a concept you need to understand. When you're buying 6 shares, let's come over to our situation. We ran into that situation ourselves. We bought 6 shares of DSJ, and if you recall, we did not have 6 shares of KBS, and we did not have 6 shares of SP. DSJ we did great with. And so then what we did was we took DSJ and we merged the J company with DSJ in one stock round. And that got us to 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, see? And we actually have 8 shares of DSJ. How did we get 8 shares? Well, because we then merged another company a round later, right? A stock round later. So that strategy of putting all of our money in DSJ meant that KBS didn't get as much. And SB for sure didn't get as much. Now, Mr. Wellington picked 3 fantastic companies. In fact, I would say he got 3 of the top 7. BHB would, in my opinion, be up there. But like I said, the Prussian companies you can get later in the draft. They will not go early. And there's another reason they don't go early, and it's because their track rights. Their track rights are $40. So if you look at the track rights for like Spain or Italy, it's $10. And I know it seems like, oh, well, that's just $30, but in the beginning of the game, $30 is a huge amount of money. So starting a company in Prussia is not a cheap endeavor. Starting a company in Britain is not a cheap endeavor either. It's also $40 there. It's just that Britain has 2 metropolises, and it has access to New York, and it has access to the Sweden red zone up there. Britain has a lot going for it, and very quickly you can make a lot of money. With Germany, you have Berlin and then nothing else. So you have to connect really far, all the way down to Constantinople, or you have to go through this mountain range to get to Austria to find your next big score with Berlin. Yes, there's a lot of Y cities, but I think we're demonstrating to you that even the Y cities are not desirable at the end of the game. So Germany is a lot slower of a growth. Berlin is amazing. You want Berlin. Notice how we have tokened the crap out of Berlin. Berlin is amazing, but everything else is not. And then also Germany is littered with mountain and water zone tiles. It is not the best place. So I know I'm beating up this point, but you can get Germany companies later. So if you are first in the draft, you probably are better served grabbing something else. And then you can come back and grab Germany later. Okay, so let's get deeper into strategy here. There's par value. When you start a company, you have to decide, am I going to be a $60 company or am I going to be a $90 company, right? So see all this blue range? And here's lesson number 1, and you're going to see that GWR started off as a $90 company, and guess which company is worth the most in the game? GWR. DSJ started as a $90 company. Guess where it is? It's the second most in the game. MSP was a $90 company, and Lawnmower was a $90 company. So amazingly enough, they're all near the top. Okay? So lesson number 1, if you start a $90 company, it's going to be because you want that company to be the best in the game. So that means you're going to be investing heavily in that company. And that means, like in the case of Mr. Wellington, he's a wonderful example. He did GWR and lawnmower at $90, and then he did BHB. And I just finished telling you, BHB was a fantastic company. But because he invested two companies at 90, in order for Mr. Wellington to get those companies viable, meaning in order for them to be the best of the best, he had to keep putting all of his cash into those two companies, and he ignored BHB. So that's your first lesson here. You can't put all of your companies at $90. Don't do that. You only have so much starting cash. Don't put all your companies up at 90 thinking, well, that's the only way they're going to be the best companies in the game. You're right. $90 is absolutely where you need to be if you want to be the best company in the game. Here's your proof. And every game you play is going to look exactly like this. Okay? But if you start off at $60, or in my preference, $65 is the better one, you're here. So right now, Lizard is a $200 company, and GWR is a $350 company. So $150 per share difference between the two. That's big. So I'm not going to lie about that. $150 a share is a huge thing, but even Mr. Wellington could not get three companies at $350 a share. So he tried to get all three of them up there, and look at his third one is way back here, sitting at $100 a share. That's awful. And because it's $100 a share, Mr. Wellington is very likely losing all the advantage he had of having the two best companies, because he now owns shares of the worst company in the game. So that's a lesson for everybody watching. $65 companies are respectable, and they will advance just fine along this bottom track. And if you have a $65 company coupled with a one or two $90 companies, now your stock value is going to be huge. Yes, one of your companies is not as good as the other two, but guess what you do with it? You make it a government. That's what you do. And then the government makes you cash. And so that's how your mind needs to work. Okay? The other thing is, and I showed you this trick, when you get to these shelves at the bottom, remember, you're investing in your $90 companies, as you should. That is the right strategy. So your $65 company is just limping along there, and what you do with your $65 company is you're going to show up here at the $80 track. You come across, and then you hit this shelf, and right here at $150 a share, you sell all your shares. Because chances are, at that point in the game, you're buying your $90 shares, and your $65 company is not getting very much love. So he needs cash to buy trains and whatnot. Well, when you get to that shelf, you can just sell all your shares. And so once you sell your shares, you get this big stack of cash like SB had. So then what did SB do? It went into a government. So it just gave all of its cash to my $90 company. And now my $90 company has $2,000 in cash, and I can buy anything I want. So it's a wonderful, wonderful strategy. All right, something more deep. Let's start with Britain. Britain is a country that most of my friends don't like to play. They always say, I screw up Britain. And they're right, you can screw up Britain. I don't screw up Britain, and I make tons of cash out of it, and people just scratch their head. Mr. Wellington is showing you how to do Britain right. Now, he did something wrong. It took us forever to get this pathway straight to Birmingham, but beyond that, everything else went fantastic. Now, a newbie mistake is people think they can go from New York to London and then from London to something else just through harbors. That is a big mistake. If you go from New York to London, you have to take track somewhere. And that is the first issue you have to bear in mind. But that shouldn't stop you. Because what you want to do then is you want to have a route that goes from London to Birmingham to Scotland to Sweden. And if you have that route is as profitable as going to Constantinople. I mean, New York is fantastic. London is the best paying city in the game that's not a red zone. Birmingham is a metropolis, so it's paying fantastic. The only wimpy one is Scotland, and then of course the red zone in Sweden and Narvik is fantastic. So that's one train in your mind that you're going to do. The second train that you'll do is you'll start in London and then go towards Constantinople. And if you can get London and Berlin, that is a score. Now that's not easy to do, but if you can pull that off, that's great. Now here's the other thing with England is you'll see a lot of people fight over the channel. And somebody in a multiplayer game is going to block this one. Trust me, they will. Because they'll be like, I'm blocking you, London. And then what you do is you just laugh back at them. That's your answer, is you laugh back. Because Little France is actually the worst spot to go to. And the Whitecliff Ferry private is not worth taking if you're in London. To me, the reason you take Whitecliff Ferry is because you started in France. So if you're Bell and you're in France, that's the company that wants to Whitecliff Ferry because you want to get into London, not the other way around. Getting out of London is easier. And so let's talk about what do I mean by that? What does it mean to get out of London? The way you get out of London is through the sea. And right here in Amsterdam, they share the same sea zone. So I can leave this port and go into this port. And it doesn't even cost me anything, okay? Just having a token in London, I can go into here and keep going. The next thing is one sea zone away, so if you have a North Seas token, which you should, if you're a London company, I can come into Hamburg, which is BHB. And so that's where we're getting into an important concept in the game. The best private company for you if you're in London, is Star Harbor. Because Star Harbor will allow me to, for example, I can put a Star Harbor in Hamburg, and I can go from London to Hamburg, and this token in Hamburg will allow me to cancel that German Bike sea zone, and I don't even have to count Hamburg as part of my route. I can just skip it. So it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Now you might be thinking, well, okay, I don't mind taking Hamburg. That's fine. So then I get this and I put it up in Scotland. So now I can do a run from London to Birmingham. I can skip Scotland and go to Sweden, and I'm getting 3 premium cities in my 3 train route. So you see how that works? It is how you blow away other people as London. And then if you can get into Berlin, great, because Berlin is worth it. Having London and Berlin in a run on Constantinople, fantastic. Don't miss that. If you can get it. But that's where the next step comes in. Look at what I did. You bypass Berlin. If you can't join them, then beat them and go right around them. And that's what we did. So you can see we go into Hamburg there, and then we just go right around it. Okay? So that's the first step. And then, so again, you need to secure an ability to go from the sea into these regions so you can do an OE run. Okay? And then, of course, you may be thinking, well, somebody's going to lay all that track all the way to Constantinople. Trust me, they will, because they're trying to go to OE as well. And you can see that they did lay all the track themselves. Look at this. They went all the way down. Now, you may have to go around Warsaw, like we just did. You may have to go around cities because other players are lazy and don't do it. But that, if you want to be England, that is all you need. Is Star Harbor. You need to go first and second, or early in the turn order, right? Because otherwise you're not going to get those companies. Star Harbor, early turn order, and you're gold. That's all you need to win in England. Now, you should have some miners. The H Company miner was a fantastic miner for him to pick up. I forget to use it sometimes, but H Company gives him extra sea zones, right? Because since you're in London, you're going to be using sea zones a lot. The L Company miner that we have is fantastic. And using it in Scotland like we did was the perfect place for the L Company. In fact, there's only a few other places that are just as good for L. Um, and in fact, I'm trying to remember where they would be, but L is amazing at that location. Okay, the other one thing to mention, and De Gaulle hasn't used it, but this this is also very useful because it lets you put a token and skip a city. So this is perfect for Scotland. And again, it's just to allow you to skip Scotland so you can get premium cities in your route. Okay, that's also a good one for England companies. Okay, moving on to Denmark. You saw us do Denmark, and you can see there that we didn't put that many tracks in Denmark because you don't need them. There's only 3 places in Denmark that are worth visiting, and it's the 2 red zones in Copenhagen. Everything else is trash. The only advanced concept with Denmark is this little C zone here. You see how I did this double whistle stop? But that's more for St. Petersburg to get in and go there. And so that's more of a Russian thing than a Denmark thing. There are 2 companies in Denmark. One of them didn't start the game. BJV starts here. And your first priority with BJV is to get a token down here so you can just stop going there. Now, if let's say you do have BJV, you get to ride all the coattails of whatever DSJ does. And trust me, DSJ will be in the game before BJV every time. DSJ is just superior to BJV in every way. So, let's say that you are BJV because you had to take another company and there wasn't much left, and so you took BJV. Having BJV and DSJ together are not a bad idea. Now, here's where I'm going with this. You want to do an OE run with one of the 2 companies. It doesn't matter which one, DSJ, BJV. My recommendation is do it with DSJ because DSJ will be your $90 company and BJV is perfect candidate for like a $65 company, right? If you get BJV to go down where DSJ is located, it'll eventually make just as much money as DJV, but DJV is going to be doing it sooner. So since DJV is going to be doing it sooner, or I'm sorry, DSJ, since DSJ is going to be doing it sooner, that's the one you want to do an OE run with. So with DSJ, you want to move towards Russia because that is your best route to do an OE run. And you saw me do that. I got into St. Petersburg there, and then once I had a token in St. Petersburg, I did an OE run with that. Your other option is you do have C zones. And you can use those C zones to land in Germany somewhere. Königsberg is up there, and we didn't even develop Königsberg. But you can use those C zones to get across and into Germany, and you can do an OE run. That way, my recommendation to you is that's a lot harder. It's actually easier to just go into Russia. Now, with that being said, why do I want to do an OE run early? Well, if you do an OE run early, then one of the 2 companies can become a government. And a government in Norway sounds crazy, but it is crazy good. And I didn't show you that in this game. But those 2 red zones, as you can tell, we're still using them. Every company is still trying to connect to those 2 red zones. So they are going to get you great money. And then, of course, Copenhagen is okay. Now, why is it that it's crazy good? Well, it's the same thing we're discovering here in Austria-Hungary. There's only like 9 total cities in the whole country. And in fact, I think that one might be down to 6 total cities. It's not a lot of cities. So once you develop those cities, then you're just making automatic, fully upgraded city money with every other train that you have beyond that. And that is where the value comes in. You don't have to upgrade much. And so when you go from one tech level to another, your 2 red zones automatically upgrade with you. So the Denmark, or the Norway, Sweden, and Denmark company that's a government is going to make you very steady cash. All right. Now, if you do an OE run before you become a government, which is what the De Gaulle strategy was, the value there is you move up 1, 2, 3 on the stock board, and then you go government, and your government is just steady Eddie, right, the rest of the way. So getting that 3 stock bump before you become a government is huge. It's the difference between being where GWR is and being further in the back. It's the difference between being here where Mav and SB is and being these companies who have not done an OE run. See, that's a 3 split difference. That's a huge amount of money at the end of the game. Okay? Going government without doing an OE run first is not a game breaker for you, but you are likely struggling and not going to win. And in fact, you saw me do it. I refused to go government because I hadn't done an OE run yet. I recommend that you make some very serious number crunching when you get there. I think in most cases you do not want to go government if you haven't done an OE run yet. And I'm serious about that. And I know if your trains are melted and you have no choice because your trains are going away and it would take up all your personal cash to keep that company afloat, then by all means go to government because you have no choice. Your hand was played for you. But if you're at a choice, you do not go government unless you've done an OE run. That 3 blips on the stock board is huge. Okay, next. With Sweden and Norway, I think we discussed everything there is to discuss there. It's a very simple strategy. One other thing with Sweden and Norway, you know how we creeped into Russia? You also want to creep into London if you can. And if you do those 2 things, you're going to have a nice... Being able to go from New York and all along the northern regions to Russia is actually a very lucrative route. There's a lot of stops along the way, but it's very lucrative to have the ability to run across the northern top of the board. And DSJ is doing exactly that. You can see we have a spot in London, we go through Copenhagen, and we have St. Petersburg. We do it with 2 different trains, but the point is, look, we're making money. This is actually one of the best companies in this game. Okay? Russia, don't do Russia any different. Tchaikovsky's showing you the way. I think the one thing you may have seen very early in the game is that WW got screwed because it couldn't lay enough track to connect to other cities of value. So by doing Russia, he should have had at least one thing in Germany to help him connect to Berlin. So there was a mistake there. The other way to get around it is just go to major right away. Instead of staying as a regional, just come to major so you get 6 track points. So I hurt Russia's strategy by not doing that. Everything else, you're seeing it played exactly how it should be played. Russia governments do benefit from all those red zones automatically upgrading, but just bear in mind that Russia requires a ton of track points. I mean, look at all that track we laid in Russia. You need all those track points to connect to all those red cities, and then of course to start bypassing them, right? Because you want to have the right to bypass them and only use them when you need to. And then you may have the dicky players who try to block you, and that happens too. If somebody is trying to get into Russia and can't get into St. Petersburg, they go to Moscow. So bear that in mind. You need to have a bypass of Moscow, not because you want to bypass to Moscow, because Moscow is fantastic, but because if you don't bypass Moscow, somebody's going to block you. And that's the issue with Moscow. Okay? The other ones you want to bypass because they're just not worth as much. I didn't do it because I didn't need to, but this Sevastopol port is connected to Constantinople, and if you just buy a South Seas token with a Russian company in Sevastopol, you can actually do an OE run without even needing to lay any of this track. And so bear that in mind. That's something you can do. And remember, you have to be a major to get an OE bonus. You can't be a regional or a minor. Because yes, a regional or a minor could possibly do something like that. You have to be a major to get an OE bonus. You have to be a major to be able to buy one of those Port Authority tokens, which are these things. Okay? So remember that rule. Constantinople is being played exactly how it always plays out. You will see people put tokens there immediately, and you should. And the reason people put tokens there is now you get to go to Levant and be able to claim that Israel money and Syria or wherever it is. And just so you know, it's a lucrative it's an awesome spot. It gets you great money. It's not the end of the world though if you can't do it. but it is a great token spot. Austria-Hungary, you saw actually it play out the way most players play it out. You will see players pay the money to plow through these mountains to come through, and that happens quite a lot. I think they're crazy, to be honest with you. I would never pay that money. That was like $120. But if you have this company like we did, then it's not crazy anymore. And so I showed you a viable strategy how that works. Now, speaking of this company, in Norway, you can actually see somebody, they'll plow 2 spots here and then lay 2 track and then 2 more, and that's using this company to lay through all those mountains for free. And so then they have a way to skip Copenhagen and just go from one red zone to the other. There's nothing wrong with that strategy, because now you can go from St. Petersburg all the way over towards London and skip Copenhagen along the way. Totally viable. It's a huge investment, right? You're using all 4 of these tokens, so that means you're not using these to go to Constantinople, but if you have them, use them. Now, the other thing I forgot to mention is if you do the BJV government strategy, and actually, if you have BJV and DSJ is the one that becomes the government, because he's going to be the one that does the OE run early. BJV will be your company that makes all the money as a private. Governments can lay track over mountains for free. So that's what you do with that government company, is you actually plow that path. And you can use a government company in, so let's say you don't own DSJ and you actually own like a Russian company. You can still take BJV with the idea, I'm going to go government with BJV. So it's just going to be some cheap $60 stock. It may not even ever do an OE run, but you're still going to go government anyway. It'll get you the steady cash, and you can lay those tracks across the mountains at the top and use that as a mechanism to get over to London from Russia. Totally viable strategy. I think it's a little deliberate to do that, and there's other strategies that'll make you more money. But if you're at a point in the game where there's not a lot of options and you still want to start another company, BJV will always be available to you. And so take it, and you can do that, especially if you're a London type company or a Russian company. It's very valuable. Okay, now getting back to this. This has a third use. I showed you how to plow through the mountains in Austria-Hungary. I told you about Norway. The third best use for this is right here in the Alps. If you are in Italy, you can use it to plow through these mountains here to get into France, so you can connect to Paris. I did show you another way around. That other way around works fantastic, but you could plow straight through Italy there and into Paris, and so use this because there was a mountain, I think, here, and there's a mountain down. There was a couple mountains we had to pay for, right? So you can use this to pay for all those mountains in Italy, and it's a very good use. As far as lumber companies go, you can see that we have that whistle stop up there, and that lumber company is the perfect use. I have 4 companies in Russia, and all 4 companies are using that lumber company every turn. So Troikovsky is using that private the best way that private could ever be used. When you get that private, it is a nice private. It becomes a fantastic private when you're using it to benefit 4 of your companies. If you're only using it to benefit 1 or 2 of your companies, it's not as good. Okay? That private pays good money every round. So even if you buy it just for the revenue, it's still a good investment. Okay, moving on. I think we talked about Prussia a bit. The thing with Prussia is it's a very slow start, and that's why you lose if you go Prussia. So don't think Prussia as a primary strategy. Don't go, oh, I'm going to build my game around a company in Prussia. Don't do that. The companies in Prussia will complement you. Like our game is built around DSJ, and then KBS is complementing it. Okay? That's what you want to do. We're showing that you can do a Prussian company and make great money, and I am. But DSJ you need another primary company to make the moolah for you. KBS is fantastic. BHB, I already explained. And the other 2, POB and KISS, they're fine because they start right next to Berlin there. They will be fine, but trust me, do not make Germany your primary strategy. France. France is a mess. And that's why I was saying you want to be able to connect to London if you're France. The Plum strategy is the best strategy in the game, even though De Gaulle showed you how not to do it. As you can see, France is, the companies in France are struggling to make money. And some of that is just, I played it poorly, but I will also tell you, France is just not a premium place. And two of the companies, OU and MIDI, didn't even start. And I would say that both of those companies are mediocre at best. And OU and MIDI are companies that you will rarely see in a game. Those are usually 2 out of the 6 that never go in the game. The third one, there's 3 out of 6 companies that you see pretty much avoid being in a game every time. It's these 2 companies in France, and then the Irish company, GSWR. There's actually a third Great Britain company, and it's just an awful start over in Ireland. It can eventually do good. It's a great idea for a government company to have one in Ireland, but it's just there's no way to make money. If you're in Ireland, you do get great access to New York, but that's it. And MIDI, by the way, has great access to New York, but that's it. So you do have to, if you are going to be one of those 3 companies, you want to use New York, but it's still hard. So that's 3 of the 6 that almost every single game you'll see players never pick them. A 4th one is BJV up in Norway. That's why I was telling you it's always available, but I gave you some viable strategies that BJV can make you money. The 4th one is Lizard. People rarely start Lizard, but I just showed you how Lizard can make fantastic money. So even though those companies tend to not be in games, those are good companies. That's what I'm trying to tell you. These 3, I'm not so sure. I was able to make great money being MIDI once. I even made great money being GSWR once. But again, it's not easy. The Italian companies are enigmas. Medici showing you how the Italian companies can do pretty well. They make average money as a private. Their best way to make money is when they become a government. And you're seeing that now. They're turning into government, and now all of a sudden they're making great money. If you're going to be in Italy, Italy has some wonderful cities, but you need to also be somewhere else. And that's the thing. You want to either get into France or you want to get into Prussia. You want to get somewhere else. Don't keep your tokens only in Italy or you'll lose the game. The reason Italy is valuable is the same reason Norway and Austria-Hungary is. There's just not a lot of cities, so it's real easy to hit the cap and then just get automatic money for everything over your cap. Spain. Spain has really good red zones, and it has this $20 whistle stop, which is amazing, and it is a great place for a government. Out of all the places, Spain is probably the best. I mean, Italy is fantastic, and I guess we're saying Austria-Hungary has some easy money too, and so does Norway. But in terms of making great money, Spain is probably one of the best for governments. Now, with that being said, Portugal has excellent access to New York, and then of course Chin is just as good of an OE strategy as Plum. Anyways, I'll stop there. You're actually seeing Spain being played pretty well in this game. So just try to do what has been done and you'll be fine. Now, this OE strategy thing, I tried to do 2 companies that rushed OE, and so I was investing evenly in both. What I should have done was just picked one, invested fully in that one, and then only invested in the other one afterwards. That was my mistake. And then, of course, I started 2 more companies, and I started 2 miners. So I had like all this money invested everywhere else, and that was a mistake on my part. What you want to do is you want to pick one company, do an OE run early, and then pick 2 other companies to be, money makers for you. So this is going to be my government, right? I'm going to do an OE run early with this government company. That's where Plum is valuable. Do an OE run early, turn them into government, and then my other 2 companies are going to just make me money. Okay? The mistake I made is I picked 2 OE companies and you saw that they both missed it. And so that's the reason De Gaulle's losing. Had I made it, I think De Gaulle would be a very strong contender, and France would actually be a lot more powerful as a country if Plum would have made it there. So now let's talk about player strategies and the crap that they do to you. Number one is blocking. Blocking you, of course, sucks. I showed you how to get around blocking in London, because people will try to block you in Lille, France. Let them, because Lille, France isn't where you want to go anyway. But people will block you in Berlin. They'll block you, like Mav blocked us here. And your answer to that is, I hope you saw what I did, you just build track. So you're just going to, track points are how you get around blocking. And then you just build around. And so this is where it's critical. When you're enjoying a nice, 3 train or 4 train, and you're getting good money, and you have track points, and you're like, oh, you know what, I've upgraded everything I want to upgrade, where do I spend the rest of my track points? What you don't do is say, pass, I'm not going to spend any this turn. What you do is, if you're sitting and you're relying on Berlin, or you're relying on this route to Berlin as part of your cash cow, you immediately spend any extra track points you have trying to go around it. Even if it's your own city, right? You can go through it, and you're like, well, why would I want to build track points to go around it? I'm just helping the other players. No, you're helping yourself, because if other players see that you're not doing that, they will block you. And they'll do it out of spite. And I've explained that I don't believe that blocking in this game is worth it, because you're wasting your own money, and you're basically, what's the term? You're doing something to your face to, like, you're shooting yourself in the foot, or you're trying to do something to somebody, but you're also doing something to yourself. That's really what's happening. But that doesn't stop other players from doing it. Okay, so use your track points to go around. Next, this is a strategy I know players would do. I have 3 shares of MZA. I know Mr. Medici has 6 shares of his company. So I get the bright idea. MZA is one of the best stocks in the game, right? They're up there at the top. If I sell my 3 shares, then MZA is going to drop 1, 2, 3 on the stock board, and it's going to be just as low in stock as Blizzard. So what an awesome strategy I just did, right? Here's the problem. I just gave up 3 shares of stock that are worth a lot of money. And as he continues to move up, it's going to be worth even more and more money. And even though I dropped him three levels, I hurt him more than I hurt me. That is true. But he's not hurt that badly. And then I have 3 shares of stock I need to replace, right? So I got all this cash. I need to buy 3 shares of something. Well, what am I going to buy? There's nothing left. I guess I'm buying some BHB. Well, that didn't help me any. So BHB is all the way bloody down there. So you see what I mean? You are hurting somebody, yes, but then you have to replenish these with something, and what's usually available is crap. Now, right now, there's actually good stuff available, because these other companies have been struggling. So we actually can buy some nice stock right now, but again, I have 3 of the best stock in the game. Why would I get rid of it? It's a philosophy thing, but you're going to see players do that. And if they do it to you, just shrug your shoulders. I mean, it's no big deal. I mean, it does hurt you, and there's a little bit of a kingmaker element. If they're doing that to you, but not to the other guy, it gets frustrating, but don't let that beat you up too much. And if they do sell them, it goes into the market, and then what you can do is you can actually buy them from the market for double price, and I know that's expensive, but if you own all 10 shares, then your company, all that cash goes to you, and he's no longer getting cash from your profitable runs. So there's a lot of wonkiness to it. The next thing people do is they start so let's say they start a private, and I'm going to go grab the A company, because the A company is out of the game. So what they do, so you get the A company here, and that's your company. And let's say that, we have Lizard is our other company, right? So what they do is and just imagine this is a 2 train. I know it's not. But at the very beginning of the game, remember, everybody buys a 2 train. He buys one, and he buys one. So what you'll see people do is the regional will go first, right? Because maybe he puts this on the board first, right? Turn order matters for this strategy. So he figures out a way for this to go first. And he does. So he lays his 3 track, and then he buys his first train, which is a 2 train. Okay? Then what he does is he goes to Lizard, he lays his track, and then he buys his first train, which is a 2 train. And I'm talking the very first operating round of the game. But here's where it changes. When he buys that 2 train, because that's the first operating round of the game, he also buys this one. And so he'll take this train and move it over, and then he has 2 2+2 trains on his major, and then this one has no train at all. Now, the strategy here is, of course, this company is not going to make anything. But you know what? Who cares? Well, at least that's the philosophy of the person who does this, right? This does make you money, right? I can do an $80 run off of this, so I could make $40 and the company would make $40, right? That's usually what happens, right? And then Lizard makes $40 and you make $40. So you're making about $80 total. By doing this company is making nothing for you. And the person who does this strategy doesn't care, because what they can do is just merge this in later, right? And then what they bought it for was for the perk, the bonus. And then, of course, laying whatever track it lays. It doesn't care if it actually does a run. They're more interested in the bonus that they're getting, and then whatever track it lays. Okay, so why do they do it? They do it because now if there's 2 2+2 trains, this company is making even more money. And you could go major with it right away, remember? From before the very first operating round, you can choose to go major on the major stock board. And by the way, by going major, you're guaranteeing that you're going last. This one will go before you. Even if he's last in the regional board, if you go major, you're going last. So there's a very smart strategy there. So you move that 2 train over, and now you have 2 2+2 trains. Well, remember, if you went $90 stock and you go major, it's really hard to make $120. Well, if you have 2 2+2 trains, it's real easy to make $120. Because we said that you usually do $80 runs, right? Well, if you do an $80 run in that first operating round, that's not $120. You're way short of your mark. However, if you do 2 $80 runs, because you have 2 2 trains, now you're making $160. Guess what? You're going up the stock board. And you're doing it from the very start of the game. That's huge. Then here's the next bonus. You have 2 trains making you $160. So you're making 80, he's making 80. And so if he's making $80, well, actually, he's going to make more than 80, because if he's a major, you're only going to be getting like 30% of that money. He's going to be getting 70%. So he's getting 70% of that money. Guess what? He's going to have enough money to buy a 3 train. Remember how we all got stuck where nobody was able to afford a 3 train? That is how 3 trains get bought. And some of these players are so good at doing this that they can buy a 3 train by operating round 2. So they do this trick I just showed you, and then they probably buy a lot of shares of their own company. They have to. They buy a lot of shares of their own company, and then the company runs, and then they make money from their run, and then they buy a 3 train by operating round 2. They can't do it by operating round 1 because they don't even own a train in operating round 1. But the very first time they actually run a train and make money, they're running 2 2 trains, and then they make enough money that they actually can buy a 3 train by the end of that round. So now they're sitting with a 3, a 2, and a 2. And that's how they start the game. It's a very fast start. I have to admit, it's a nice strategy. It's sometimes hard to beat. I can beat it because I don't do that strategy, but it's hard to beat. Now, if I'm playing against players that I know do that, that actually benefits me because I go major with my companies and make sure I go after him. So then when he buys that 3 train, I get to lay down green track. So whoever buys the green train, the people that go after him actually benefit the most because they get to lay green track and benefit from all the extra money they make from the green track. So I can sort of like play off of them, and that's how you counter that strategy is you just go later than that guy. Okay, so I showed you and explained that he can go major and do it that way. The other way is like the Medici strategy is what I've seen that player do is he buys all 4 shares. He stays a regional. He doesn't go major. He just stays as a regional, but they buy all 4 shares. And at $90 a share, that's 180 times 2, which is what? That's 360, right? So that company is going to get infused with $360 if you buy all 4 shares at $90 a share. Well, guess what? It's $100 for the yellow train, and then it's $225 for the green train. So $225 plus 100 is $325. If I'm putting $360 into my company, that's more than enough to buy a yellow train and a green train. And you don't even have to do anything. You don't have to destroy a miner or anything. You don't have to do like the cross buy, nonsense. All you do is just buy 4 shares of your company before the game starts, and then you're golden. Medici was going to do that for you, but remember, he had to buy those 2 other companies, and that drained all of his money. But I was going to demonstrate for you with Medici. I was going to do the exact same strategy of getting a green train right away, but I was doing it with the 4 share strategy, and it just didn't work. Okay, what other things can people do? Other 18xx games involve people who you trash your company. And so you just pick one company and it's going to be trash for you. I think I've explained that as we've been doing these videos. This game is not like other 18xx games, so don't do that. Many 18xx games, you can start a company and then you make your profits off of it, and then you have to ditch the company and buy and start another brand new company midway through the game. As you can tell, this game is not the kind of game where you buy companies midway through a game. This is a game where all the companies start at the beginning, and in fact a lot of the rules are locked until they all start. And you can't unlock them until after they've all started. There's other 18xx games out there where that is not the case. And it's like every man for himself, and you got to be very narcissistic about your company. Like, I'm going to just use it until it's no longer valuable to me, and then I'm going to ditch it, right? It's a different mindset, a very different mindset. And those are 18xx players are going to have those mindsets because they play those kind of games. And so they're going to come to this game, and they're going to try to do that, and they're going to try to ditch companies and whatever. Let them, because if they're doing that, they're going to lose, at least this game. And I'm just warning you that if you play this game and then you go play a different 18xx game and you try to say, oh, I'm going to invest at $90 and this is going to be the best company in the game, you're going to lose. So you have to understand every 18xx game can be drastically different, even though they all share similar concepts. All right, I'm at 52 minutes. I think I've covered enough strategy. I was trying to think, like, with privates or the I hope I demonstrated that this D company is super duper nice. The L company is probably the best in the game. The K company was just nice because you get money for doing nothing. The other ones are just functional. These other miners like E and G, they're nice, but they're not gonna win the game for you. And those are the ones, like this A company here is the one you really see people. What it does is it just gives you extra stock money whenever you merge it. So people will not even try to run this. They'll buy the 2 train and then immediately give the 2 train to one of their other companies, and then the A company just lays track. That's all it does until they can do a merger. You'll see that a lot, and it's no big deal because this A company is never going to make enough money to buy its own 3 train. It doesn't even have any bonuses because as soon as you merge this A company in with another company, it goes away. It gives you See, it gives you your stock. The bank pays cash into the company's treasury equal to the current share value of the majors. So you're using this to just make a major valuable. So I buy this. I give my 2 train to GWR, right? So GWR now has extra trains to make extra money. This one is just laying track, okay? So then it's time to do mergers, so I merge this into GWR, and now GWR gets a infusion of money equal to its stock value because of this. So basically, the whole purpose of this company was to help GWR to become awesome. And that is a strategy I highly recommend. I should show that. I should have showed that. But it's not a bad strategy. The only con to it is that this could have been making you money along the way, and you're choosing not to. Now, my friend who does this strategy swears to me, you're right. This one doesn't make you any money, but instead this one makes you the money. So you're not losing any money at all. You're just transferring which company's making the money for you, and he's right about that. It is possible you can get screwed, because if you have two trains, do you have enough track? Do you have enough stations? There are some places you can get cornered and not have anywhere to run your trains. But assuming you can run your trains, it's a very good strategy, and the A company is the perfect one to do it with. You can do it with your E company or G company, but those ones aren't quite as handy. Looking at the other privates, this is the ferry one. We talked about that. That's more for French. This one here, these two just give you $5. I mean, buy them. They give you $5. It's better than nothing. Beyond that, there's not much else to say there. I think we talked a lot about how to get a nice New York run. When we get the D companies, you're going to see how the double runs work. I showed you how to get like the Israel added to your Constantinople run. You're basically seeing a lot of the ways to make money come out. So I don't have to actually talk about those too much. So with that being said, I think I covered all the topics. Thank you for watching, and I do have to go to work. So sometime later today, hopefully I'll get started and we'll do RCP. Thank you.